class is recording.
No, it doesn't.
I think so.
Miss Bucker said we're favored.
So here we go. Basic parts of the cell. We did this yesterday. I just want to review it real quick just to make sure everybody gets it. Remember that every cell, no matter what type, okay, what kind, whether it's a bacteria, a fungus, an animal cell, plant cell, whatever, they're going to have these two parts. They're going to have the plasma membrane and they're going to have the cytoplasm. Okay? So any of the cells in our body, doesn't matter what kind of cell you pick, it will have cytoplasm and cell membrane. Okay? All right, so then we went through the plasma membrane, remember, and that was cell's outer boundary. We said that it's a barrier, it's going to control what comes in and what goes out of the cell. And then the cytoplasm we talked about yesterday as well. And the cytoplasm, remember, is going to be that whole region inside the cell between the plasma membrane and the nucleus. And the cytoplasm is going to include all of the fluid, all the organelles, all the cytoskeleton, okay? And so the fluid itself is actually called cytosol. Right? So does everybody have that highlighted right there? And so the cytosol, that fluid, is 80% water, 20% protein. All right. And then we got to the comparison between prokaryotes and eukaryotes. And so if you remember, here's a picture of the prokaryote. Much simpler, not as much stuff inside them, right? They don't have a nucleus. They don't have membrane-bound organelles. Basically, what they do have is they have the cell membrane, the cytoplasm, what all cells do. They have DNA. They have ribosomes. Okay? So that's pretty much everything that prokaryotes have. And what was their DNA like? Does anybody remember that? So one big single circular chromosome, okay? And it's all just kind of wadded up there in the middle where that blue stuff is. And then the eukaryotic cells, this actually goes to the next page. Remember, they do have a nucleus, they do have organelles, and they're a lot bigger than the prokaryotic cells. So right here, you got your white blood cell versus your bacterial cell. And this is where that blue was supposed to come up, but that's okay. So here you have, this is basically what you guys have up here. And I told you this, it's over response slide, right? Okay? But it's probably not, hey, just repeat the chart. It's going to be most likely, I'm going to give you a picture of a cell, and I'm going to ask you if it's a prokaryotic cell or a eukaryotic cell, and you're going to have to defend your answer by using this stuff on this chart. Right? We good? Get that? All right. And what I had earlier, the eukaryotic cells, the four kingdoms. What are those four kingdoms?
Plantae, animal.
Plantae, animals, fungus, and okay. So those are the four kingdoms. All plants, all animals, all fungus, all protists have a nucleus in their cells, have membrane-bound organelles, and so on. Okay? So that's where we ended yesterday, right? Yes. Perfect. Okay, so that should bring us to this thing called a colonial organism, which actually looks like it's a multicellular organism, but it's not. It's a bunch of single-celled organisms that are kind of intertwined, or they're kind of connected, and it looks like you have a multicellular organism, but really, we just have a bunch of single-cell things.
So it's like a little tribe of cells.
Kind of, yeah.
A gang.
And the reason, even though they're connected, which that would typically mean multicellular, they don't work together, okay? So this says that they have no division of labor or no cell specialization. You know, in our cells, if we have a bunch of cells that are all connected, they're usually doing the same job, right? Group of cells makes up tissues. You remember that? Okay? Well, they work together. They're all going to work together to do something. Well, in this, that doesn't happen. And so each cell is basically doing its own thing. It's just connected to this other cell. And so if we look at it through the microscope, which I'll show you a picture in a second, it's going to look like multicellular, but it's really not, okay? Because it says they're not coordinating their activities. They're not working together. So this is a picture of a colonial organism. Okay, this is actually a photosynthetic type of bacteria. Okay, I believe it's called cyanobacteria. And if you look, they appear to all be connected. Remember, bacteria, they grow and then they split and they divide. And then basically when they split and divide, it looks like they kind of stay close or kind of stay connected. Well, they're not working together though. This cell right here is doing its own thing. This cell right here is doing its own thing. And I guess you're going to get the picture as I pull it up. All right, there you go.
Wow.
It's the same.
There we go. There's the. That's where I got it.
Weird.
That was weird. I didn't know I even touched it that.
You know what else is weird? Your face.
Chris. It's the one she doesn't record our class.
Yes. All right. So colonial organism. Any questions on that? As far as what to highlight, basically I have a collection of genetically identical cells that live together in a connected group. Yeah, because that's the only thing that would start.
Okay.
I was making sure I didn't have too many stars going on. Okay, I do that sometimes. All right, so that brings us to now, okay, so we talked about single-celled organisms, prokaryotes a little bit, and then colonial organisms look multicellular, but they're not, but now we're actually moving into multicellular, okay? So if you guys remember, you already had this, chapter 1, okay? We talked about the hierarchy of life, so you have this already, but here it is again because now we're talking about cells. So in these eukaryotes, right, cells with a nucleus with membrane bound organelles that are multicellular, so plants, animals, fungus, some protists are even multicellular too, we're going to have cells.
Students and staff, apologize for the interruption, but this is concerning the earpiece that has been lost. A reward is being offered for that. It's a very expensive piece of equipment. It's black, it has an earpiece, and it has a magnet that is connected to it. So it should be very noticeable. There's a chance that it could be even in somebody's clothing, like a hoodie top or something, because the young man shook his head off to get the rain off as he came in the building, and it could have flown off and been in someone's clothing. So if you would check, he was coming from the science building to the main office, and that is a very expensive piece of equipment that we need to locate. So thank you, and hopefully someone will find it.
Because there's a guy in my Spanish class.
Probably like free lunch.
Yeah, is it Gilbert?
Yeah.
Is it guy named Gilbert?
Yeah.
Have an offer of.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they
Well, I think it's probably, somebody didn't know if it flung off or
They need to
whatever.
find it.
Probably a
Probably
It's not that, it's
Nobody
not
wants
that
to
I don't
steal
think
it.
that people aren't looking for it. I feel that it's that because people are going to end up keeping it because it's very valuable.
Oh, I don't
Yeah.
It's not even, there's nothing to do with it.
I don't think
back to the notes.
Back to the So, here we go. So you guys remember, groups of cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up organ systems, and then all those organ systems make up the organism, right? So that's how organization works in a multicellular organism. So, just to kind of refresh, tissue we need, remember, which is a group of cells all working together, okay, to carry out a specific job. So, under your notes, it says the cells are organized into tissues. And then we have tissues are organized into organs. So groups of tissues are all going to work together to do a certain job, right? For this organ, what is that job? You guys know what it is? It's the lung. It's so to breathe, I heard. When we breathe, what is actually happening? The exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen, exactly. So oxygen is entering into the bloodstream, carbon dioxide is diffusing out of the bloodstream. So there you go. That's our main job here. And then as you keep going, then you have organs are organized into systems. So this is a zebra. Here's our organism. And we can kind of start low here, start at the bottom. You've got your molecular level, right? First you have atoms. Remember this was that hierarchy of life. You have atoms, so oxygen or hydrogen or whatever, those are your atoms. And then we have, this is DNA, so DNA is a molecule, okay? That DNA is in the nucleus of the cell, which is a cardiac muscle cell. All right, what's cardiac? Heart. Okay, it's a heart muscle cell. And then you look at this big circle, that's going to be cardiac muscle tissue, right? So all of those muscle tissues, so part of the main part of the heart that's going to push pump the blood, right? That's going to be composed of this type of cells right here, cardiac muscle. Okay. Then in that heart itself, in that organ, do you think we're going to have other types of tissue too besides cardiac muscle?
Yes.
Yes, we're going to have some smooth muscle, which is going to line like the ventricles and the atrium and stuff like that. All right, so we're going to have things like that that are going to be happening as well. So you're going to have other tissues with different jobs in that same organ. And then you go up next to system. So in your zebra here, you can see there's the heart, and then all the vessels, all the arteries and the veins and stuff. That's going to compose the circulatory system. And then you have all those other systems, right? Besides the circulatory system, we did this before, right? You got skeletal, muscular, you've got reproductive, urinary, right? So remember all those systems, we've already done that. And then that's going to all work together to make this organism survive, I guess. And without one of those systems, we have a hard time surviving, right? Okay. So that should complete section 2. All right, so section 3 is going to be starting the organelles, basically, and what all these organelles do, what is their job.
Plasma membrane / cell membrane.
Yep, same thing. So the first one is the plasma membrane. So cell membranes or plasma membranes, same thing. Remember that they're made up of the phospholipid bilayer, right? So 2 layers of phospholipid. That's pretty much what that means. And also remember, we learned in this last chapter, that the phospholipids are the most abundant molecule in the plasma membrane. So when we talk with plasma membrane, the majority of it is going to be made of these phospholipids. So those 2 things are both highlighted. So most numerous abundant molecules of the cell membrane is phospholipid. And then the way that the phospholipids are made or composed is they, does anybody remember the parts of a phospholipid? Just to see if you remember from last chapter. Okay, there's 2 fatty acids. So we'll get to the 2 fatty acids. Phospholipid, what do you think it might have? Phosphate group. And what else was in our glycerol? There you go, glycerol. Okay, so phospholipid is made up of glycerol, a phosphate group, and 2 fatty acids. Okay, and that was from last chapter. But what you do need to know here is that these phospholipids have a polar head, so it's like this circle, which I'll show you another picture on the next page, and they have these 2 fatty acid tails. Okay, so highlight that. The phosphate group of this molecule is polar, and that's hydrophilic. What does hydrophilic mean?
They're attracted to it.
Attracted to water. Right. Okay. So that polar head likes water, and then those 2 fatty acid tails, they're hydrophobic. They do not like water, right?
The fatty acids don't like water.
Right.
The phospholipid does.
Yes. There's the phosphate group on the phospholipid.
So hydrophilic likes water, hydrophobic doesn't.
Right. Exactly. And so not only does the plasma membrane and these phospholipids surround the entire cell, but you remember how we were talking about membrane-bound organelles? Remember that? They also have phospholipids around them. So like the mitochondria, for instance, has membranes around it, so it's got all the phospholipids that surround it too. Okay? So even more than just the plasma membrane surrounding the cell, it can also be surrounding some of these organelles too. So here's a little better picture of what the phospholipids look like. And you can kind of, this first one right here, this is the polar head, which is made of the phosphate group. And then there's your 2 fatty acid tails. Okay? And so then what happens is bunches of them, you all line up, and then they line up tail to tail, basically. So The one layer's tail is lined up with the other layer's tail. Okay? So what you have the polar heads towards the outside, and also on the other layer, you have the polar heads towards the inside. And the reason that is because your cells are bathed in water, so there's going to be water outside the cell. And then remember, we just talked about your cytosol is 80% water, so you're going to have water inside the cell too. So if we had it the other way, if the tails were to the outside, water would never be able to come in, and water wouldn't be able to get out either. It would just kind of repel it and be stuck in the middle. All right, so that's why. And so with those fatty acid tails being in the middle, the water comes in, and then it kind of repels it all the way through, I guess you could say, or kind of allows it to go through that way. Also highlight this statement right here where it says the phospholipids line up so their heads face out and their tails point in. I think it's the very last and the second paragraph there underneath. It says heads facing outward in both directions and fatty acid tails facing inward. Okay. And then we saw that picture about the plasma membrane. Remember yesterday we looked at it with the scanning electron microscope picture? Remember that? And we said that the plasma membrane wasn't all nice and smooth like we probably thought it was. So you can look at this, even though this is, just like a computer picture, it's still, you can see that this stuff sticks up all out of the plasma membrane. And so that's kind of some of the things that you were seeing yesterday. All right, so function of the plasma membrane. See where it says big bold function? Controlling what goes in and what goes out of the cell. And we consider this plasma membrane to be selectively permeable. You ever heard of that word before? Or two words, I guess? What's selective? You're selective about it. You're choosy, you're picky.
Yeah,
right?
like in the club on Tuesday. This song is
What?
recorded.
This is why we should record this like, okay, yes.
Whatever.
Alright, so selectively means picky. So the cell membrane, plasma membrane is picky about what it's going to let in and out. And permeable means, that's what it means. Permeable means able to go through or go, from one side to another. And so, picky about what it lets in and what it lets out. Alright, so it's not going to let everything through, and it's not going to let everything out. It's going to only let certain things in and out. And all that's going to, pardon?
An example.
Oh, darn.
Very simple.
Darn. He's like,
I don't have anything on it. Alright, where it says example, I don't have anything right now. I don't know why I have that.
do you possibly want us to draw a picture of it? No.
Yes! You're correct! That's it. What?
Well, just draw
Draw you some phospholipids.
5 circles.
2 of them, top and bottom, on each side.
So you want
And
to
then lateral, polar head, and fatty acid tails.
It's not that hard. Just draw like 3 little circles and then draw little tails and just place them. That's it.
Exactly. If I can draw it, everyone can draw it. Okay. It just is on that.
Mine looks like 4 guys riding unicycles.
Of course it does.
Hey, that works.
Also known as Mona Lisa. 4 guys riding unicycles. Let me see this.
Pretty good, doesn't it?
It does look good.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically the plasma membrane shows what comes in, what goes out. Now what we're going to do is, obviously you can see that there's more than just phospholipids that make it up. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that's all intertwined and mixed in with the phospholipids. And so the first part of the plasma membrane is going to be the cholesterol that we're going to need to make. Remember how we talked about cholesterol? There's good cholesterol, bad cholesterol?
Yes.
Well, this is the good cholesterol, okay?
Yeah.
This is the stuff that's going to help compose your cell membranes. This is going to be the stuff that's going to control fluidity of the cell, meaning spaces out those phospholipids enough to let things in and out of it. Also, it prevents the cells from freezing. Pretty cool. So, let's see, as far as highlighting goes, keep the phospholipids spaced out, thereby controlling fluidity. I would also put somewhere in there, keeps cells from freezing, prevents them from freezing. And I'm going to add that in as well.
No, it's not. You want to take this episode? Christmas socks.
Christmas socks.
So I've heard it's
You look like a
What did you
Okay.
say?
So cholesterol are going to be these little yellow chains,
Did you say like
gold, I guess. Everybody see those?
Yes.
Okay, they're scattered out just here and there. They're not right next to every one. They're scattered out here and there. And what they're going to do, like I said, is they're going to space them out enough. Okay? It says it controls fluidity. So you guys know that certain liquids have, the ability to flow better than others. That's called viscosity as well, right? Okay? So what we want is we want some water and things to be able to come into the cell as well as go out of the cell. Well, if everything is so jam-packed in there so much, those phospholipids are so packed close, we won't be able to get things through. Okay? So the cholesterol spaces things out to allow stuff to come in. Okay? So there's going to be lots of stuff that cells need besides water. It's also going to need oxygen, right? It's going to need that glucose that we talked about. It's going to, it's got to have all this stuff. So, there we go. Okay, so the gold ones are the cholesterol. Then, in your plasma membrane, you have a bunch of little proteins that are also scattered throughout. Okay? And I put this little note over here, page 78, in your book, the blue book, okay, that you might want to just kind of write that in there somewhere. When you're studying, you might want to look at this picture again. I'll look at that. Yes. And I put my little red stars. Gold, they're red. But anyway, these are things we're going to need to know. So, embedded within our phospholipids or embedded in our cell membranes are these different types of proteins. And there's 3 different types. Okay? So you're going to have transport proteins, receptor proteins, and recognition proteins. So recognition is like cell surface markers. They're going to identify cell type. And I have a little, on the next slide, I have a little better picture. So if you don't want to highlight yet, just wait. And then receptor proteins. Okay, it says recognizes and binds to substances outside the cell. So receptor proteins, basically, they're going to be the types of proteins that are going to notice that the cell might need something, or that the cell needs to, merge with another cell, or whatever. It's going to help with communication, basically. And cells communicate with each other. Do you guys all know that?
yes.
Okay, they either chemically or electro-signals and all those. And then we're going to have transport proteins, which are like these little channels, little tunnels or tubes or whatever. That's
So you
going
can call
to,
it the hotline?
which one?
You can call the tubes like the hotline.
I would.
You can call it like the hotline, and whenever they're calling each other, it's like it's blinging.
What about the receptors
Yeah, like,
that talk to each other?
yeah.
Okay, yes, you can go with that one. Now, the transport proteins, no. But, yeah, transport proteins are going to help substances across. Like things that are too big to fit between these phospholipids, okay? Like glucose, it's too big to fit right through those. So it's got to go through one of these transport proteins, one of these like little tunnels or channels, like the Panama Canal, connects from one body of water to another. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so it's kind of like that. All right. All right. So here's a little better what to highlight then. Okay, so here you go. Recognition proteins. These are going to be those cell surface markers. They're going to stick up off the cell. They're made of a thing called glycoprotein. What do you think that's made of?
Glycogen.
Protein.
Okay, yes. And identifies cell type. So it's got this little marker above it, this little protein that's sticking up that says, hey, I'm a liver cell, or hi, I'm a muscle cell, or whatever. Okay? So it's a recognition protein. Those receptor proteins, okay, those are the ones that are going to talk to other cells. They're going to recognize and bind to certain substances of the cell, outside the cell. They're your talkers. They may say, "Hey, we need some more glucose in here," or something like that. They're gonna be the ones that kind of send the signals to the other parts of the cell, saying, "Hey, well, let's glucose in if we need some more," or I don't know, I'm trying to think of some stuff.
So they
There's
can
too much
say-
waste in here. Let's get some of this waste out, or
They can say
whatever.
multiple things. It is not like it only means one thing.
Right. Exactly. And then remember, enzymes are proteins too, right? And so enzymes help with all of our chemical reactions inside the cell. So you've got those proteins too that are going to be in there. And then the third one here, which is embedded in the phospholipid or in the plasma membrane, are transport proteins, which are going to help those substances move across. Okay? Things that are too big, once again, to fit right between these phospholipids, they're going to enter through that channel, through that tunnel, basically.
Leave that slide for just a second.
Yeah. Okay. So just to kind of recap, under number 1, transport proteins, I have allow specific molecules to pass in and out of the cell. Okay, so that's actually the third one on my slide, first one on your notes. I don't know if your notes are the same as mine still. Yeah, okay. Number 2, on your notes says receptor proteins. And what I have is highlighted, says change shape when the hormone attaches, it sends a message into the cell. And I got those 2 things highlighted.
Change shape when the hormone attaches, and what else?
Sends a message into the cell. And then the third one, recognition proteins, also known as glycoproteins. Please know that. Also known as, that's what AKA. So these are the ones that are glycoproteins, and they are for cell identification. That's the very last couple words there on that. Pretty great. That's their job. Okay. Now, the plasma membrane is also called like this fluid mosaic model. All right. Basically, what it's saying is that phospholipid bilayer is going to allow things to come in and out. So you guys you all know the difference between a liquid and a solid, right? We talked about this. You already knew that, I'm sure. Like a solid, when I move it, shake it up and down or whatever, don't things usually stay in place in the solid?
Yeah.
Okay. Now a liquid, if I had, a bunch of macaroni floating in a cup of water and I move it, the macaroni moves, right? That's the same thing with our cells. So just because the mitochondria is in the top left of your cell at one point, it might move down to the bottom left later, okay? What it's saying is that stuff all moves around, just like things move around in a liquid, okay? And so that's kind of what we have going on. This is a fluid mosaic model, so most of your cells are going to work this way. Okay. All right. I'm going to show you guys a little video, cell video. Little song. The cell song.
It's a song.
Yeah.
Can we sing it?
You know what song we need to listen to for Christmas?
No.
Christmas. It's the great.
I went into the cell to get out of the rain. There was the gatekeeper, the cell membrane. I went into the cell, and what did I see? The mitochondria, the energy factory. I went into the cell and synthesized this fuss, and found myself talking to the phospholipids. Went into the cell to recover from the staff, and found myself with some clear cytoplasm. I went into the nucleus to ask how to get home, and got genetic info stored in a chromosome. Went into the cell, and stretching out so far was a big network. It's called the ER. I went into the cell, trying not to be perplexed by the packaging and sorting in the protein complex. I went into the cell and said, who makes proteins here? And somebody responded, it's the ribosome, my dear. I went into the cell and was feeling pretty fine till the lysosome invoked me and saw me in time. I went into the cell and was feeling pretty good till the centriole lysosome dying up in still. I went into the plant cell to see how trees get so tall, and all around the outside was a rigid cell wall. I went into the plant cell why it's so green, I asked, cause I'm making from sunlight to green or glass. I went into the plant cell to see how plant cells store food within a vacuum. The vacuum was the storage tube.
Who's one?
So when you go inside a cell, remember what you see. There's over 1 trillion cells in you and me. Just sing this song in every confusion. And remember
Broke on their shoulder.
Okay, so introducing you to some of these other organelles.
That's the worst thing.
Didn't work.
I just looked up a rap song earlier for
The Adam
cell.
song in chemistry was way worse than that.
Oh,
We listened to that. Atomos. Atomos.
yes, yes. Okay, so we should be in the nucleus now, I think, right? Okay, so, all right, so I think everybody's heard of the nucleus before, but what did you learn it as?
The brain.
Control center of the brain of the cell, right? So that's pretty much it. I mean, and why is it the control center, or why is it the brain of the
Because it's
nucleus?
like
The
the
brain-
middle.
Because it stores.
Not really because it's in the middle, but I see where you're.
Because it stores genetic.
It has the DNA in it, and that's why it's the brain, because it has the entire code to make you, to make whatever that organism is. That's the DNA is. So the nucleus has all the DNA, which has all the instructions to do everything in the cell, and that's why it's the control center or the brain of the cell, because it's got all the instructions there. Okay. So nucleus, membrane-bound organelle that contains the cell's DNA. Alright, so what's nucleus is surrounded by a double membrane. Does everybody see that in the second line down? This is usually going to be your largest organelle. Okay, I think you probably figured that one out. Typically, there's only one nucleus in a cell, but sometimes there's more. Alright? Like a paramecium sometimes has more, a euglena or a prototis. But most of the time, your cell just has one nucleus. Let's see. Alright. So then if we kind of start looking at this picture, and I wish I put this picture on all my slides so I could point to it, but remember that it has this nuclear envelope. Okay, the nuclear envelope is part of that double membrane, right? Nuclear envelope, there's two membranes that are surrounding this nucleus, and that's called the nuclear envelope. Okay? Let me just go ahead and we'll get this so you know what to highlight. Okay, so we talked about the nucleus directs the cell's activities, houses and protects the cell's DNA. So if you go way down there at the bottom where it says function, to store and protect DNA. not the very bottom of the page, bottom of the nucleus. Store and protect DNA. So I would go ahead and highlight that. I think I have it on here again, but just wanted to make sure in case. All right, so remember inside the nucleus, there was that stuff called nucleoplasm. All right, very similar to, like we said, cytoplasm. Cyto means cell, plasm means fluid. Cell fluid, well, nucleoplasm, nucleus fluid. All right, so fluid inside the nucleus. So you definitely need to know that one. So highlight that. The nucleus is filled with a fluid called the nucleoplasm. And also on this slide, remember we talked about DNA and how DNA is in two different forms. Remember that? So DNA is in the form of chromatin, thread-like, okay? So it kind of looks like a big bunch of yarn that stays together, usually, okay? So that's kind of what chromatin looks like. All the DNA just all kind of wadded up in the middle. And then, remember that yesterday, did we talk about this, how many chromosomes we have in a human cell? 46, right? And we said we have linear DNA, right? So all these, single pieces in a line. So we have 46 of those. And like I said, they're all kind of wadded up when they're in chromatin. Well, when the cell gets ready to divide, what that DNA does, what those linear chromosomes do, is they coil up into a rod-shaped structure, and that's called the chromosome. Okay. So when the cell is not dividing, it's in chromatin, and when the cell does divide, or is getting ready to divide, that DNA starts coiling up into those chromosomes. So you do need to highlight that. Ooh, sorry, I forgot to. You do need to highlight that. So it says the DNA molecule is the main molecule found in the nucleus, and you need to know chromatin is when the cell is not dividing. And chromosomes is when the dividing state of DNA. Okay. And after this little video, we'll come back up to the nucleolus. Okay? Sorry. We will highlight it. It's just in a different spot. It's, a little video.
Nucleus of a cell. The largest and most visible organelle in a eukaryotic cell is the nucleus. The nucleus stores the DNA that contains information that tells the cell how to make all of the proteins that control cell function. The nucleus is covered by a double membrane called the nuclear envelope, through which materials can pass.
And the reason it can pass is because we have these things called nuclear pores, right? So those are those little openings. Anybody know what kind of things might want to get out of the nucleus? We're going to know what's made in there. Okay, so DNA actually wants to stay in the nucleus. But, okay, where are the ribosomes made? In the nucleolus. Remember, where did we find the ribosomes when we were labeling our cells?
Outside of.
Right, either in the cytoplasm, the free ribosome, or attached to the endoplasmic reticulum, right? So they're made here in the nucleolus, and they need to go through those pores to get out to the cytoplasm and make it run beyond, okay? So they need an opening, they need a place to get through, right? So that's what those pores are for. And another thing, somebody said DNA. DNA stays in the nucleus, but RNA, you remember RNA? RNA is a copy of DNA, and it's going to leave the nucleus too. So it's going to come out through those pores as well. Okay? So that's what those pores are for. A lot of people kind of wonder why they're there. That's why. Okay, so we had already done that. Nucleus is surrounded by a double membrane. We've got that. The nuclear pores are passageways for RNA and other materials like ribosomes. And the nucleolus is going to make ribosomes. So you might have to write that in there. Do you have to, or is that in there?
It's there.
Okay. And then ribosomes are later in the notes, but just in case you forgot, ribosomes, remember their job is to make protein. So that's what synthesis means, is to make. So they're responsible for directing protein synthesis. And ribosomes are made up of RNA and protein. Okay? So nucleolus, got that one. All right. So That brings us to mitochondria.
Powerhouse.
What do you call, yes, the powerhouse, that's what I was gonna ask. What is their little nickname or whatever after you learned that mitochondria, you said, was the powerhouse of the cell, and the reason is because that power that it's making is called ATP energy. So, the function, if you drop way down there, mitochondria build ATP from glucose. I don't see why you couldn't. You should have mitochondria. So mitochondria are going to take that glucose, which our body can't use as just glucose. So what it does is it breaks that glucose down and it makes adenosine triphosphate, ATP. And if you remember, ATP was used for every reaction in our body, for us to blink, for us to have a heartbeat, everything needs ATP. So mitochondria are a pretty important organelle for us, definitely. Okay? And they also have a double membrane surrounding them. So very first thing under it says double membrane organelle. Highlight that. Okay. And basically inside, you can kind of see the two membranes on this picture. And then inside, you've also got all these folds, basically, which are called, anybody remember? The folds inside the cristae, either way. All right. So the folds of the inner membrane are called the cristae. And what they do is they increase surface area. So if we stretched all that that's in it, it would be really long. And so what we can do is if we fold it, or kind of wrap it in there, it increases the surface area. Rather than just having a line that's this long, we can fold it and our line can be this long, right? So anyway, that's kind of what's going on here. So you've got more of the mitochondria or more of these membranes basically that are all intertwined in there, which gives it more area to build ATP from. All right. A couple interesting facts I think about mitochondria is that they have their own DNA. Kind of weird, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yeah.
There's DNA in the nucleus, and then this organelle inside of our cell has its own DNA too.
That's weird.
It is kind of weird. We'll talk about why that is probably tomorrow.
Say that again.
That it has its own DNA. So it says inside the matrix, the mitochondria has a single circular DNA molecule. I like that. And then another thing to highlight is mitochondria are not created by the cell, but reproduced by the cells from other mitochondria.
Wow.
They're very looking at. And then bring it back up there in case you hadn't already. The folds of the inner membrane are called the cristae. Increased surface area. And that is where we will quit for today.